Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting. I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 8:02. I will take a roll call. Trustee Irvin? So we can see him on via Teams. Trustee Maestas? Present. Trustee Marks?
Present?
Trustee Mejia?
Present.
Vice President Brown?
Present.
Trustee West?
Here.
And President Lopez here. Welcome, everyone, to the Modesto City Schools Special Board Meeting of May 7th, 2022. This meeting is now called to order. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. This is the open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available at the district's website, and the recording will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Any public comment received via email or voicemail prior to the beginning of this meeting will not be read out loud, but it has been given to each board member and will be provided to the public in the back. Email and voicemail public comments will also be attached to future board meeting minutes so they can be approved. Please, is there anyone wishing to speak this morning from the public? Seeing none, I will move forward. And this takes us to A3, the approval of the order and discussion items. Do I hear a motion to approve the order of discussion for today's meeting? Motion by Trustee Maestas, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. And again, this takes us to the period for public presentation, but as stated before, there is no one in the public today wishing to make a comment. So we will move on to our first item of today, which is the first reading of BP and AR 6162.51, test integrity and test preparation, and this is Mr. Reynolds.
Can I say something before we start?
Yes.
All right. Good
can-
morning.
One thing before you start, because I want to say this before we go through each one of these, I don't have to say this same thing, because there's something I'd like to change in all of the board policies, if possible, that this shows up. I just figured I'd say it now before we get into everything. I would like to propose that anytime in any of the board policies it says he, she, that be changed to either he, she, they, to include non-binary, or just take it out and put language in there that doesn't have pronouns.
So they put their in there on most of them, THEIR. So they crossed out his, her, and put their. So is that okay? Because I think that would work fine.
That would be fine too.
Okay,
But there's
let's
still
just do
plenty of them that don't have that, and so I don't want to have to just kind of repeat myself for each one.
Yeah, I noticed that too. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, we could just make it consistent and put their and the
Yeah,
his,
I'll be
her.
okay with that. Okay,
Yeah. And then other ones were changed to the employee or the
Right, I saw that.
employer. So yeah, those are fine.
Okay. And so we will, but I think that we will need to see if there's any in there, in each one, so that we can, because you mentioned that there's some that are already corrected.
right, so when we vote, we just have to vote with that change.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, and so, Mr. Reynolds,
Good morning, Board President, trustees, Dr. Noguchi, Cabinet, on this fine Saturday morning. Today, I have the privilege of bringing to you the first reading of Board Policy 6162.51 And as a reference, I'm also sharing the district's administrative regulation for said board policy. This policy guides the district's practices regarding statewide testing as clearly delineated in the education code as well. This proposed board policy is new to Modesto City Schools, though it mirrors the board policy we see in Gamut. The proposed policy outlines the important role of statewide testing that it may play in promoting high quality teaching and learning. And you'll see it also speaks to the importance of annual parent notification of testing, which we do, encouraging participation appropriately, and the option to exempt students from testing in accordance with law. You'll also see some verbiage in here about sharing the results of these assessments with the board annually, which we also do, and updating the district's local control and accountability plan to address underperforming student groups. So please note, I've made a few changes. In one spot, I mentioned each school shall develop appropriate strategies. This call out is there to reflect a district of our size and to continue to empower our school site principals to develop their own fun plans to encourage student participation rather than a cookie cutter district plan. I'd like to see plans fit their student body and their own student social emotional need. It may surprise you, but our principals can, on occasion, be more creative than me and tend to know their students better. So now, in terms of the associated administrative regulation, even though I'm not asking the board to vote on approving the AR, I am sharing it with you today. And I should note that there were a few more proposed differences from the CSBA stock version of the AR. To be honest, that version hasn't been updated in years, and there have been several changes in state law regarding CASP testing since it was updated, so it really needed to match what the law said. And the differences in that AR that I'm proposing are sourced directly from the new language in the education code so that the AR will better reflect current law. So today, we recommend that the Board of Education approve the first reading of the proposed draft of Board Policy 6162.51. And now I'd love to take some questions or note any input that you might have for me.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on this item? Seeing none, do I hear? Oh,
Oh, I use this. Yeah, okay.
Trustee Maestas.
Sorry about that. I have one question on the AR on page, man, what page is it? It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in part D, in instruction and testing period. I see that the CSBA language says that the assessments will be administered between the date on which at least 66% of the schools or tracts annual instruction days. What's lined out here is that that's for grades 3 through 8, but it gives more time, at least 80% of the annual instructional days for grade 11. So my question is, why are we not giving high school more time as CSBA would recommend when there are so much more standards and items to go over in the high school?
I'm actually pulling up the original CSBA with the notes here. And I will share that the struggle was trying to align their older version with the new verbiage in the law. Can you share one more time where I can find that? Sorry, I'm scrolling through here.
It's in, it's AR Part D, instruction and testing period. And it's the first, no, it's in number 1, CASP operational.
CASP operational, okay. So, but no earlier than the second Tuesday in January of each year. Testing may continue. So, without pulling up the actual source law or the ed code that I quoted that from, at the moment I couldn't tell you, but I can definitely check to see if they've kept that 80% piece. If that's certainly what the law still says, then we should still include that.
Great. I think most schools do that anyway.
Yeah.
I would like to see, the high schools given more time, just so they're not put in too early. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious if I'm reading. Maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but it sounds like the new language says that it goes longer because it goes to the last day of instruction for the regular annual calendar of the school or track, all the way up to no later than July 15th. So that sounds longer than the.
Yeah, so that verbiage would be just basically when you can start testing, as early as when so you can't start any earlier than when 66% of the school's annual instructional days have been completed. And really, we don't want to either, because the more instruction our students have, the more likely that they'll perform well on the assessment and really show what they know. So we tend to try to push it as far back as possible so that they have time to get as much learning in as possible.
Okay, I'm fine with adding it back in. That's okay. I just thought the new language said you had longer than 80% of the annual instructional days. So that's fine.
You are correct. You do have longer to complete it. I'm just saying that the verbiage about the percentage is actually about the start date, and then the having until the end of the school year does provide more time for them to end the testing window. So you're both right.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of BP 6162.51, test integrity, test preparation? Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. This moves us on to BP and AR 6178, career technical education. Ms. Barkis?
Okay, can you hear me now? Yep. Okay, good morning, President Lopez, Board, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. This morning, I will be discussing the new board policy, BP 6178, in regards to career technical education. This is a brand new policy, and it reflects the changes in CTE language. So, over the past 7 or 8 years, there's been a shift from ROP language, categorical funding, funding sources, grant sources. And so this board policy aligns with those new changes and new ed code. Within the board policy, there is mention of model curriculum standards. Those were adopted in 2012, and all of our programs are already aligned with those, and this just reemphasizes that piece. And then it also discusses programs of study with partnership with industry, secondary education, and then the importance of informing counselors, parents, and community regarding our opportunities. I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much. I do see a question from trustee Brown, trustee Maestas. So I'll start with trustee Brown.
Yes, I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Some things that were new to me, so I just want to make sure that how we're doing some of these things. There's reference on page A to a CTE advisory committee. So can you tell me what that committee looks like in our district?
Sure. So when I started in 2019, we formed a CTE advisory committee that reviewed all of our programs. We actually went deep into industry standards, content. We realigned all of our pathways with current language, and that committee was developed based on teachers, admin, industry partners, business partners, our economic development workforce, Doris Foster advised. Recently, so we did that work. We had, I think, 4 or 5 different meetings where they advised on what we needed to do. Our latest advisory committee meeting was on April 12th. And that was done in form of presentation with feedback from the public. And we had about 60 people in attendance for that, students,
that's great.
admin, industry, so on and so forth.
Good, so I saw that we needed to have students involved in that, so I'm
Yes.
glad to see that that happened.
Yes.
And then on the next page, in about the center of the page, it says that we need to invite participation of private school students in our CTE programs. And I'm
Yes.
just curious if that would include charter schools that are under our umbrella. And just curious if we've reached out to the schools like Connecting Waters to make sure that our CTE programs are available to those students.
So historically, we have offered opportunity for enrollment in the programs back when it was ROP, and that was primarily just to the private schools, not charter. The language is about private, and I know private and charter have some different laws. So we have not reached out to Connecting Waters or other charter schools, but rather, like Big Valley Christian will often reach out to us regarding this opportunity. Recently, due to COVID restrictions, we have not had students from outside of our district be part of our programs, but with the new language and moving forward with no more restrictions, as far as COVID-related restrictions, we will be allowing students to come in and access our programs once again.
So when these are not ROP programs, but they're taught classes during the school day,
Yes.
students can come on campus from private schools and take those classes, is that correct?
Yes, with this new board policy, yes, they can. ROP was a different structure, and so often students would be able to access those work-based learning opportunities. Now, all of our programs are embedded during the school day, and the majority of them are 1 hour. They're not the 2-hour ROP structure that we had previously. And so that does, in talking with Big Valley administration, that can limit students' ability to come onto our campuses and take those opportunities just because of the time crunch, but we do still offer that.
So how does that affect our ADA when we have non-district students attending our classes? It does not?
No, we don't claim their ADA. They come in and they have access to the class, but they're not part of the enrollment because they're already enrolled in a private school.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Maestas?
Thank you. I have a question, I guess, on part C, the very last page. Very last page, kind of second to the last sentence. It says, data shall be disaggregated by program and various student subgroups. I just propose that we change that to groups based on consistency with other board policies that we have that have changed the word subgroup to group. So. Or student group, yes. So that's that one, and then I have another question. So this is more of a question for the AR. So this is ARC. Let's see where we are. Yeah, we are ARC. Past all of the lineouts to partnership academies. So the district shall operate one or more partnership academies as a school within a school focused on a broad career theme. The program shall be available to students in grades 10 to 12, at least half of whom shall be students who are at risk of dropping out of school, as indicated by 3 or more of the following criteria. I'm familiar with a program like that they have in series. The word, just the term at risk of dropping out, I don't know how to change that. Is there any way to change that to not be so negative? I know that we experienced the at CSBA, the change from at risk to at promise, but I don't know how, if we want to change that kind of language within that. It was just something I thought of when I was reading it. more of a discussion for the board. And then lastly, this one does have he, she in all of it, so I propose that when we vote on it, that we change those to they or the student. Those are my comments.
Yes, we have trustee West, and then I'll go ahead to trustee Urban.
I just had the same, not the same question, but the partnership academies. I know we have academies. I wasn't aware we had one specifically for our at-risk students. And so what campuses are those on?
So we have 5 California Partnership Academies, and within their grant language, this is the criteria for students to be a part of it and for us to have access. Davis High School has the Health Academy and Public Safety Academy. Modesto High has Performing Arts Academy. Johansson has an Ag Academy, and then the Forensic Biotech Academy at Enox High School.
So it's not specifically for at-risk. We just need to make sure we have a certain percentage of at-risk students in those
Correct.
academies. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Perfect. Trustee Urban?
Yes, one of my questions was on the BP on C, where it says the superintendent or designee shall regularly assess district needs for facilities, technologies, and equipment to increase students' access to district CTE programs. I was thinking, should we put a timeline in there so we can know, accountability? How often will we assess programs to make sure the facilities, technologies, and equipment are adequate and up to standard, meet standard for success? Because those facilities, technology, and equipment are very critical to CTE in their development and achieving success in CTE.
Okay,
And
I can speak to
my
that.
second one would
Okay,
piggyback on trustee and Maestas on the AR of using designating another some language other than at risk, or even at promise wouldn't be appropriate. Something that gives us that designation to be able to identify those students who are struggling, but also have promise as well. So at this moment, the language eludes me, but I would like to see something that that's more, like you said, positive in terms of designating those students.
Okay, if I may, I can address the first concern or question. As far as how often we assess the student or the district needs for facilities technologies, I am on the construction committee. So once a month, we're looking at what's going on in regards to our CTE facilities and possible construction. In addition, that's part of our advisory. That's part of our different funding sources. We evaluate what we have prior to approving purchase orders or movement and enhancing and expanding our programs. So that, I mean, if you want something specific, it does say we regularly assess, and I would say we do every month, if not more often than that.
Okay, yeah. I just didn't want it to happen when I was in high school. I had a print shop class, and the equipment from the print shop class was from the Vietnam era. So evidently
Yes.
they had been assessing the needs of the district in the CTE courses.
Yeah, and we have a process within our CTE department for teachers to request equipment that's updated at industry-specific standards. And so on an ongoing basis, our teachers are submitting requests identifying how their request aligns with standards, both industry standards and academic standards. And it goes through a process of approval through the site principal, our account technician, and myself to ensure that we are having up-to-date equipment. And then again, like I said, as far as facilities, I'm part of the monthly ongoing construction meeting. And then the other piece, Oh, the at-risk, so this is language that is in the grant that people apply for when they are applying for a California Partnership Academy. It is part of the Ed Code. It does say at-risk. As far as our policy goes, if you're wanting to change that, I think my recommendation would just be to take that portion out and just identify that the students have 3 or more of the following criteria. Instead of identifying them at risk, you could just identify that they have to meet the criteria that's outlined within the program needs.
Okay. Now we have Trustee Marks.
Thank you. I was super excited to see this. I've spent many years on the Link Learning Task Force and the statewide one on the board, and I was wishing we could have some kind of policy that lined up with CTE like that. And so I was very happy to see this on the board policy to add, and that we're aligning it so clearly so that parents will know. I know it's been a push by the business community. They wanted to see us do more of this. And so I'm super happy that this is all laid out so clearly. And I'm hoping that someday, I know we lined out all the stuff about linked learning programs, but I'm hoping that someday we can align it to that, because I know all the effort that went into that statewide and national. We had some national people on our committee that helped us formulate how best to integrate business, college, and high school so that it was all aligned, and so that students, when they went through high school, they could get those skills so that they could be hired by the business community. But also, if they wished to, sometimes the business community helped provide grants that they could go to college and paid for their college as well. So that was a really positive way to take CTE into the future. So I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do that, but I know we had specific criteria so that they would know that those students had the specific skills that they were asking for, so by the business community. But this was awesome, so thank you very much. And yeah, I understand the at-risk both places, and making it more positive. But I was going to say, can we change it to who are of concern of dropping out of school? But if you could just take it out, I guess that'll appease the board members. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Trustee Brown?
Yes, I know the purpose of today's meeting is not to critique our program, but to adopt language. But I'm really impressed by the fact that we have the safety net for so many students who are, hate to use the word at risk. But this is a way for us to reach out to students and help them find opportunities to stay in school. And I'm wondering, it says that at least half of our students have to be in that category in these programs. Do we have any record of how our participation lines up with that requirement?
Yeah, so our partnership academies have an annual report that they have to submit to the state every year. And within that report, they show all the data of the students. So we do have that data regularly or available every year. I believe I'll be doing a presentation on our CTE programs in the month of June. And at that time, I can bring that data forward so you guys can see the success of our California Partnership Academies if you would like.
Yeah, I know that we've put so much effort in, and we've gotten a lot of recognition for the great things that are happening in these academies. We've toured, we see the students and their excitement in what they're doing. You know, if we could celebrate the success of, you know, how these students who were previously at risk are no longer, you know, that would just be something that I'm sure the public would really welcome and appreciate the efforts of the district.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve BP 6178, Career Technical Education, with the additions, with the modifications already mentioned? I have approval from trustee Marks, seconded by trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. And you'll be helping us out with our next item, which is VP 6178.1, work-based learning.
Okay, so here again, this is the proposed draft. It is new to our district. This particular board policy outlines various work-based learning opportunities. Over the years, that definition has changed as to what work-based learning looks like. Once again, aligning with our Perkins 5 funding, which is a totally different process as it was in previous Perkins cycles. And so this outlines like when we talk about work-based learning, what is it? And so it talks about work experience education, what a community classroom is, which previously was identified as ROP, but is now part of our capstone classes, job shadowing experiences. It outlines that, which I think is important because it gives a definitive amount of time that's required for job shadowing, between 3 and 40 hours. And so there's some definition there. Student internships, apprenticeships, service learning, so on and so forth. It also talks about the community classroom agreement, which is an agreement that we've had in place for years. When I started teaching in the 90s, there was already an agreement in place that aligned with what this board policy says for our students to go out and be able to work in the community, unpaid or for community classroom experience. Those are the main components of this particular board policy that I noted. And there are some different pieces in the administrative regulation as well, but I'll go ahead and open the board policy for questions or comments that I can answer.
I have a question from trustee West.
I just had a quick question. When I read through this, it was interesting to me that it says the board may elect to pay wages to students. Is that something that we do frequently? I wasn't aware of that.
No, we don't, not currently. I noted that as well because that's a new idea that I think that maybe would warrant some additional conversation and planning so that we could identify ways to pay our students in these different opportunities that they have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Maestas?
I just want to make note, this one also has the he, she, so when we vote, that's one of the changes for this one.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
I'll mention with the additions or the modifications established, so when I say that and I say modifications, know that that's what we were.
So then I don't have to, we don't have to go over it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's why I did it in the beginning, so that we don't have to do it every time. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Sounds good.
I saw trustee.
Trustee Irvin?
Yes, I had two questions. One was answered, the trustee, asked by trustee West about the payments. My other question on that was, are the students covered, who covers the workers' compensation for students, when they're in this, work-based learning program?
So it depends on which opportunity they're pursuing or that they're active in, whether it's a job shadow experience, that would be just a field trip permission slip, which our district covers them. When it comes to actual work-based learning, where they're being paid at a location, that gets into our work experience education piece and the work permit requirements, which incorporates state law. And again, once again, they're protected by the school district and state law.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Trustee Brown?
Yes, I see that there's reference to insurance in this, but my concern, I love the idea that students have the opportunity to get out in industry and work and gain experience, but I'm always concerned about the safety of our students. And, by putting them out in another environment other than the controlled school environment, we put them at risk of things like sexual harassment and possible abuse. How do we monitor our students who are out in other workplaces and ensure that they have a safe environment?
And so within the administrative regulation piece, it discusses the frequency by which teachers need to make connections with the work-based learning environment. Our work experience teachers, I need to find it, but they go out, I want to say every 2 weeks or so, and they check the facility to make sure that it's safe for the students. And this is just our work experience component. They have regular contact with the employer. They talk to the students on a regular basis. One of the requirements of being in work experience is that the students attend class once a week so that they have that one-on-one with the teachers. So there's consistent supervision and oversight by our staff to ensure the safety of our students. As far as our community classroom piece goes, which is where the students are enrolled in a class and they're going to a location as part of their classroom experience, the teacher makes a visitation every 3 weeks to consult with the teacher to look at the facility to make sure that it meets safety criteria. What we have found as well is that a lot of businesses that would be concerning regarding equipment, manufacturing, those sorts of locations, they won't take our students till they're 18. And so I think that is a sure way to make sure that our students are safe, and maybe they're not our students anymore when they start going into those environments that could be seen as being a little more hazardous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion to approve VP 6178.1, work-based learning with the aforementioned modifications? Moved by trustee Maestas, seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Vargas. Thank
you.
And this will take us to our fourth agenda item, which is the BP deletion of 4112.5, 4212.5, and 4312.5, criminal offender information, criminal record check, confidentiality statement, and criminal justice info. And this is Mr. Beauchene.
Indeed. Good morning, Board President Lopez, members of the board, Dr. Noguchi, members of cabinet. It's good to see you again. I present for your consideration the deletion of Board Policy 4112.5 et sec, and for your review, Administrative Regulation 4112.5 regarding criminal record checks. The AR establishes the protocols that the district will follow, which prohibit the hiring and continued employment of those persons duly convicted of various enumerated categories of offenses, conducting pre-employment record checks through fingerprinting, receiving and processing subsequent arrest notifications, and the proper maintenance and handling of confidential criminal offender record information, or CORI. The board policy is being deleted to align our policy and administrative catalog with those of the CSBA. At this time, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Any questions on this item? Trustee Marks.
And looks like trustee Irvin. I will start. Looks like trustee Irvin also. Do we have a board policy now? I noticed, because we deleted this one, I didn't see another board policy to replace it.
There is not. The CSBA doesn't have a board policy for this. It's exclusively an administrative regulation, and so the changes were made to reflect that.
Okay. Only because there was a lot of legal references and ed codes that were listed when it was originally put in 1999. So I was just checking on that. And then the other part, I wanted to understand better why we deleted the interagency agreement portion.
That's a good
of the
question. The reason that was deleted is because we don't have one.
Okay.
And so it's not applicable to the district. I thought about leaving it in case that ever becomes relevant, but given the fact that the majority of time that it's likely to not be applicable, I felt it was probably worthwhile to delete that since it's not relevant to our district, and we can update it if that changes at a future date.
Okay, I just was surprised just because we have all the feeder districts and we have, a lot of schools that our students come from that aren't our schools. So I just was surprised that we didn't have an interagency agreement, but that clarifies it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Irvin, did we have a question from you, or was that?
Well, Trustee Marks just had it answered, so I took it down.
Perfect. Trustee West?
I just had a question about what constitutes a serious felony. And I know it says as defined in the penal code, and then it goes on to list in the paragraphs on the first page several times, serious felony, felony. Are there a lot of them? Is there any reason why we can't have a place where we list them? It's just because it's a little bit vague, I think, and serious felony can be, or do people need to go back and just look at the penal code?
I guess it really comes down to a matter of opinion. What I would say is that Penal Code 667.5 does list a pretty healthy number of offenses.
There's a lot.
There are.
Okay.
So the simple answer to your question is we could. We're going to be talking about adding a lot of language and a lot of specific offenses. I do think it's probably more efficient just to make reference to the specific statutes where these offenses are enumerated. But yeah, I think there's 15, 23, and then there are additional subsections in addition to that.
I'm comfortable with that, absolutely. I just, anytime there's language that can be construed many different ways, I just want to be wary of that because serious can mean something different to everybody in here. But if it's listed in the penal code, and I think we're covered that way, so I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, I'm a little confused, but I think I understand the reference. Number 4 on the first page talks about controlled substances and certificated employees. So what I'm trying to be sure is that we're not giving any special allowance to our certificated employees in hiring if they have had a controlled substance offense.
What I would say is that this isn't a special allowance as much as it's not considered a detriment that's going to be held against them. So in this particular case, what we're talking about is assuming there are certain prerequisites that are met, they will not otherwise be kept from gainful employment when they're either already employed and have a credential or in the process of applying with a credential.
So I'm still confused by that. So give us an example to help me understand that if you can.
Well, you have a teacher who has been convicted of a controlled substance offense. They have a credential in good standing and are employed in another district currently, and then are applying to our district for employment. While we would want to know the information about that, it wouldn't necessarily prevent them from being employed in the district, assuming that a review of that offense and the conviction didn't raise any additional red flags.
I guess I understand that.
It also says, the superintendent designee shall not deny or terminate employment. So I guess another example would be we already have a teacher in employment that gets convicted of a controlled substance for some reason. Then the superintendent can't just automatically terminate them for that offense. Can't just say, you're gone, right? That's what's written there.
That is
Is
correct.
that different between classified and certificated?
There is one critical distinction, and that is that the governing board, in a situation involving a classified person, has evidence presented to them that the individual has been rehabilitated for the last 5 years. That is per the requirements of the Education Code.
But that's for classified, not for
That
a
latter part,
certificate.
yes.
All right, so I'm just concerned. It feels to me like we have less restrictions on our certificated employees than we do on our classified employees, and the certificated employees have the most influence on our students. So something just doesn't feel right there.
Tech help? Tech? Oh, there it is. Okay. I think trustee Maestas was pointing out a point, which is rather than automatic action taken on that, that it would have to follow through the certificated disciplinary process. And I think it may be alluding to that.
Does it need to be more clear?
We can certainly follow up with a more articulated communication to you prior to this coming back for second reading.
Isn't it aligning to ed code?
Yeah,
It
each
is.
of these does.
So
I-
I just said it's aligning to ed code, so we can't change the ed code, but we can outline the process for you if that's the question that you have.
Yeah, that's it. I want to make sure that we're addressing student safety and the appearance that it would cause if we're too relaxed in our standards for certificated employees.
Sure. If I can just add a quick note for context, there has been a more recent push with California law to allow for more avenues of rehabilitation rather than essentially throwing the book at individuals with certain kinds of offenses. And that has reached public schools as well. And I think, if I am understanding the statutes correctly in my review, that sentiment is reflected in some of these statutes, but as we said, we can go through and give you an overview of that process so you have a better understanding.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay, if hearing none, do I hear a motion for the deletion of 41-12.5, 42-12.5, and 43-12.5 criminal offender information, criminal record check, and confidentiality statement, criminal justice information? Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to VP 4119.23, 4219.23, and 4319.23, unauthorized release of confidential and privileged information.
Board Policy 4119.23 and the following establishes the requirement that staff not disclose confidential and/or privileged information acquired in the course of their employment, whether that information is obtained during a closed session of the Board of Education or through the normal course of business when performing their job duties. The policy also notes specific limited circumstances in which disclosures of such information would not be considered to violate law or policy, as well as notes various applicable penalties which might result from willful and/or negligent disclosure of this kind of information. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments? No, seeing.
Just a question. This applies to board members as well, correct?
It does.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Seeing none, is there any other questions? Nope, seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve VP 4119.23, VP 4219.23, and VP 4319.23? Oh, I do have a question from trustee Irvin.
I think.
Now, I was raising my hand to make a motion.
Oh, got it. So, do I hear a motion to approve the already stated VPs?
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Irvin and seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
Thank you very much.
And this takes us to our next item, which is VP and AR 4161, 4261, and 4361 leaves. And this is Ms. Mariscal.
If I might, just first time before the board, I'd like to introduce Maria Mariscal. She's a supervisor of employee benefit programs in the benefits department, leading that department. So we're certainly happy to have her as part of the team, but first time presenting for the board. She'll begin with the board policy, which is the umbrella policy governing the following subsequent administrative regulations.
Good morning, Board President Lopez, Dr. Noguchi, and trustees. Board Policy 4161 is a new policy for the district and governs the procedures for paid and unpaid leaves of absences in accordance with the law, board policy, and administrative regulation and collective bargaining agreements. It is the umbrella policy, and there's not a separate policy for each. The administrative regulation goes into more detail on how the district will implement the policy. It is recommended that the board approve the first reading of Board Policy 4161.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? Trustee Marks?
Thank you. I had a question on the sabbaticals on the first page, and it's point number 8. I didn't know if those were supposed to be approved by the superintendent, but because it talks about in the next paragraph, long-term leaves, that with board approval, an employee may receive a leave of absence without pay and without accruing seniority or service credit, but sabbaticals didn't say there was prior approval. So I just wondered if there's approval for sabbaticals, only because this was an issue a few years ago. There was a teacher that really wanted to go on a sabbatical for a year. And I didn't know how the whole process worked. We didn't have a board policy that stated. And so I didn't know if we could add approved by the superintendent or designee on this. Because it helps eliminate question as to whether I really want to go on a sabbatical. So I'm just going to let the district know I'm leaving for a year. And I have rights to my job in a year, so.
No, it is a leave request that
Okay.
is submitted and goes through a process. It's a pretty lengthy process
Okay.
outlined within the bargaining unit agreement for MTA specifically.
Okay.
I have to check, I don't think there's a classified equivalent. We have gotten very few requests for sabbatical over the years
Right.
and have approved, in my time, I don't think we have had anybody go on and actually approve sabbatical, but it's an extensive process. It would, all leaves, you have those line items that come through the board.
Okay.
And there would be a reporting requirement at the end of it and so on. It's a pretty elaborate process outlined within the bargaining agreement.
Okay, good, because this was before your time.
Yes.
So I was kind of wondering how we did it. So we haven't had any for a while, but I'm glad that there's a process that we go through, because it just didn't state that in this, so that's where I was questioning that. And then I had one other question on the AR. It's the first page on the AR, and it has, after use of leaves by classified employees, it just says provide, it's like towards the end of that sentence, provides adequate notice and relevant supporting information. I didn't know what kind of adequate notice for someone to stay on, let's see, this one was to stay on a vacation, I think. Classified employee may interrupt or terminate vacation leave in order to begin another type of paid leave without a return to active service, as long as the employee provides adequate notice and relevant supporting information regarding the basis for such interruption or termination. So I didn't know what kind of information does a teacher need? I mean, so let's just say they've been on vacation for 30 days, and now they decided that they wanted to stay on longer. There's some kind of adequate notice. It didn't give any specifications, so I didn't know if you gave adequate notice was 2 or 3 days or a week, or, what that meant. I don't know if it's handled case by case. I just was wondering more about it.
So if a classified employee wants to interrupt or terminate vacation because possibly they become ill and they need to go on a different type of leave, such as extended illness, it would require that they submit a physician's note with a start and end date. So it depends, it's on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on what they would qualify for.
Okay. I thought that's what it was, but I just wanted to make sure when I saw, because a lot of different ones had specific amount of days, and so that's where I was just wondering. So thank you. That's
You're
all I
welcome.
had.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve VP 4161, 4261, and 4361? I have a motion by trustee West, seconded by Vice President Brown. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. And this moves us to AR 4161.1, personal illness injury leave for certificated employees.
Administrative Regulation 4161 is a new regulation for the district and governs the procedures for certificated employees who need to take personal illness, injury leave according to law. We do have a leave article as part of our collective bargaining agreement with MTA. We have adopted the CSBA language with exceptions to align with our collective bargaining agreement. As an administrative regulation, this is for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding Administrative Regulation 4161.1 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions on this item? Trustee, Vice President Brown?
I want to make sure I'm on this. I want to be sure I'm on the right document. So which are we looking at right now?
AR 4161.1
Okay, good.
for certificated.
Looking at page A, there's reference to districts shall not require employees to waive leave accumulated in a previous district. So I just need to understand, when someone is hired from another district, does their sick leave from the previous district carry over and we pick it up? And that's because
Ed code.
Ed code requires that? Okay. So do we have compensation from a previous district, or is that just our expense?
It's carried over, and there's forms to be completed by the district they're coming from. The amount of leave that they've accumulated that will then be carried over. There isn't an exchange of any compensation with the other district.
So we could hire a seasoned teacher that has a large accumulation of sick leave and foot the bill if that is used.
Correct. Likewise, teachers, veteran teachers leaving our district and go to another district would request a transfer leave they've accumulated here to use in their subsequent district.
Okay.
Trustee Maestas?
I just have a follow-up question on that. Is that all of their accumulated, or just up to the 13 years service credit that's in the contract? I think we give 13 years here. So it's all, okay.
We count the 12 years toward salary placement.
Right.
When we're hiring a teacher from another district, or 11 years up to placement on step 12. I don't know if there's a correlation to the number of sick leave hours. In other words, we only count 11 years for salary placement, yet if they've accumulated a number of sick leave hours beyond that, if we put a cap on that, we'd have to verify what our practice is there.
I see. Thank you.
Thank
The
you very-
CSBA language does not state that there is a limit to how many sick hours somebody can accrue.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? If not, this is an AR and we'll be moving on. This is for our viewing only, and we'll be moving on to our next item. Okay, we'll be moving on to an AR 416111 .11, 4261.11, and 4361.11 industrial. Excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. We are an AR 4261.1 personal illness and injury leave for classified employees.
Administrative Regulation 4261.1 is also a new regulation for the district, and it governs the procedures for classified employees needing to take personal illness, injury leave according to law. We do have a leave article as part of our collective bargaining agreement with CSCA. The AR was separated by classification as entitlement to number of sick days and how sick reserve 100 days are paid is different for classified staff versus certificated. The reasons for personal necessity are also more detailed in the CSCA agreement. In addition, the CSCA bargaining unit agreement includes parental leave. We have adopted the CSBA language with exceptions to align with our collective bargaining agreement. As an administrative regulation, this is for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding Administrative Regulation 4161.1 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, will be, as mentioned before, this is an AR and it's for the board's viewing, and we'll be moving on to our next AR, which is AR 4161.11, 4261.11, and 4361.11, industrial accidents and illness leave.
This is one that we were able to consolidate into one. So this is a new administrative regulation for the district, and it outlines the conditions for taking a leave of absence for an industrial accident or illness that arise during an employee's assigned duties according to law. An absence for industrial accident or illness shall not be considered a break in service of the employee. An employee using such leave shall retain all status and benefits to which he or she would otherwise be entitled. This administrative regulation is provided for the board's information only. And unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding Administrative Regulation 4161.11, 4261.11, 4361.11 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, sorry, Vice President Brown?
Yes, there's reference in this as to workers' comp. Are we administering workers' comp, or do we have an outside agency?
Our workers' comp company is handled by our risk management team. I'm not quite certain if we're self-funded. This is something that I would have to, right here.
We are self-funded, but we have a third-party administrator.
Okay, so there's reference here to workers' comp related to an injury, and if the employee receives workers' comp compensation, they relinquish that to the district and then get paid their wages or salary. Is that how we handle it?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
It was new concept to me, so I wanted to just be sure that that was the way it was.
Yes.
Okay.
In certain situations for industrial accident leaves, yes, that's how we handle it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, this is an AR, and so we will be moving to B10, AR 4161.2, personal leaves for certificated employees.
Administrative Regulation 4161.2 is a new regulation for the district and governs the procedures of taking a personal leave pursuant to law. We also have an article in the MTA collective bargaining agreement specifically addressing personal leaves. The AR includes leave for emergency duty and civil air patrol leave. Additional leave provisions, including child care and community service leave, are described in the collective bargaining unit agreement. This AR is provided for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, will be added to the district's regulations. As an administrative regulation, This is for the board's information only. And unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding Administrative Regulation 4161.2 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much, and I do see a couple questions for us. Trustee Marks?
Yes, I had there's one edit, just wanted to, on page B of the AR, 4161.2, and then I have a question on that section as well. It's under number 4, it says a classified employee. I think it should be certificated because this is with the certificated personnel, is that correct?
You're referencing 4161.2, page D?
B as in
B as in
boy?
boy. Okay.
And then the number 4 that's on that page at the top. And then it says a classified employee's appearance in any court or before any administrative tribunal as a litigant, party, or witness under subpoena or other order. I believe it's supposed to be a certificated
Yes.
employee.
That
Okay.
needs to be corrected.
No worries. And then the next part is, so lined out was 6, but on the next AR with the classified employees, there's another page, and so it's on the same page, B. It's also B on the next AR, 4261.2B. There's a whole list of real and personal property transactions, family business, wedding and wedding preparations. So I'm wondering if that was supposed to be in this one as well, or is that only classified employees can have a leave for wedding and wedding preparations, graduations, retirement counseling, adoption proceedings, all of those? So are those supposed to be also in this one?
No, so that's
Okay.
part of the
Oh.
reason why we separated the certificated and the classified.
Okay.
The MTA collective bargaining agreement is not as detailed on the reasons why somebody can go on a personal leave versus the CSCA agreement. It's a lot more detailed. And so there was enough differences between the two, which is why I ended up
Okay.
separating them.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Okay.
A certificated employee would still be able to apply for all of these reasons, but it's not as detailed and specific in the MTA collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, thank you, because I was like, wait, are the certificated employees missing out on this? So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Is there, Trustee Maestas?
Yeah, I have a question, mainly just to kind of make sense of something on B, it's actually A, B, the whole personal necessity piece. Employees may use a maximum of 7 days of their accrued personal illness, injury, leave during each school year for reasons of personal necessity. I understand, number 1, more days after bereavement. I guess I don't really quite understand number 3. Illness, preventive care, or other need of a member of employee's family as defined, like, isn't that already fall under their doesn't that already fall under sick leave? Does it need to be done during with personal necessity? Because what is the I guess, protocol for personal necessity? Because I know personal necessity, usually they have to go, like, fill out a form that's separate and different, but sick leave is just sick leave. So I just don't understand number 3, why it's even in there, because it refers to illness or preventive care, and that is in the sick leave portion, and why is it in the personal necessity portion?
Right, so this is part of the education code, and that's why we have that language. If an employee completes a form and identifies it as illness, we would contact the employee and we could change the type of leave from personal necessity to extended illness. And an employee does have to have sick leave available in order to use personal necessity. So the personal necessity days are taken from somebody's sick days.
Okay, I mean, I understand, it just seems redundant to me, right? It seems like it's in more places than it needs to be. Is that, I don't know,
Right.
does that make sense to everyone? Like, I don't know, to me, that's what would.
I think what might help is it's personal necessity, and 3 says it's illness, preventative care, or other for a family member. So sick leave is just for you, and then the personal necessity is if you're helping someone else with the sickness. I think that's what I'm
No,
reading.
sick leave is also including kin care. So anybody else that's sick within your family, you can use sick leave as well, not just on this part. That's why, I mean, I'm okay with it being there. I just wondered why it was there, because it seemed like more paperwork to have to go through. And it's just added in a place that I didn't think needed to be added. But I'm okay with it. I just wanted to know what was there.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
it's on. Test. In the MTA bargaining unit agreement, there's definitions for sick leave and its applicable use. There's a separate section, sick leave, illness, or hospital confinement of members of immediate household, and how that would apply. I think with sick leave, what we found is being more inclusive is probably the safer way rather than more limiting. So with certificated, I think this does align with how it's laid out in the bargaining unit agreement. And there could be situations where certain leave may exhausted, where another one may apply. So I think that one is referencing, as Dr. West mentioned, the portion about, this being able to be covered for illness or preventive care or some situation involving a family member.
And something that I would add, just as a reminder, board policies are the what, and the board directs the what we do. The ARs is how we do what is required by law and what's required by board policy. So I say that just to keep into context the time that we're spending on ARs. This is more of kind of lifting up the hood and looking at how we're doing the work and abiding by the laws and the board policies that you all have outlined for the work, and ed code.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, we'll be moving on to our next item, as this is an AR. And this takes us to B11, AR 4261.2, personal leaves for classified employees.
Administrative Regulation 4261.2 is a new regulation for the district and governs the procedures of taking a personal leave pursuant to law. We also have an article in the CSCA collective bargaining agreement specifically addressing personal leaves. We separated the AR for classified staff as bereavement leave, and personal necessity reasons are more detailed, as Trustee Marks, you alluded to earlier. The AR includes leave for emergency duty and civil air patrol leave. Additional leave provisions such as child care and community service leave are described in the collective bargaining unit agreement. This AR is provided for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, will be added to the district's regulations. As an administrative regulation, this is for the board's information only. And unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding Administrative Regulation 4261.2 to formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Trustee Marks.
Yes, just as an edit, and I wasn't sure if it was meant to be taken out, but it's on page AR 4261.2A at the bottom of the page, number 2. And if it's the same as the one from the certificated, it would be an accident involving the employee or the employee's property or the person or property of a member of the employee's immediate family. So that was in the certificated one, and I'm guessing it just accidentally got deleted when it transferred over.
Thank you for pointing that out. So that's a numbering error that we will fix.
Okay, so it is supposed to be there, and it's the same?
It's on number 3 on the next page. It's just,
Oh,
there
right,
should
that's
actually
right.
be 15 in the sequence, not 16. So
Yes.
we'll-
I remember looking at that and saying, oh yeah, it just needs to renumber it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I forgot to write that down, though.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other questions or comments. So, thank you very much, and we'll be moving on to our next item, as this is, again, an AR. And this takes us to B12, and which is AR 4161.5, 4261.5, and 4361.5, military leave.
Administrative Regulation 4161.5, 4261.5, and 4361.5 is also a new regulation for the district, and it governs the procedures for taking military leave pursuant to law. Employment and reemployment rights of employees who take military leave of absence are protected by the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. We also have an article in the bargaining unit agreement specifically addressing military leave. As an administrative regulation, this is for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding administrative regulation 4161.5, 4261.5, 4361.5 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is AR 4161.8, 4261.8, and 4361.8, family care and medical leave.
Administrative Regulation 4161.8, 4261.8, and 4361.8 is a new regulation for the district and governs the procedures and conditions for taking family care and medical leave pursuant to law. The district shall not deny any eligible employee the right to family care or medical leave pursuant to the FMLA or California Family Rights Act, or leave for pregnancy disability leave. It includes updated language for family care and medical leave related to the birth or placement of a child when both parents of the child work for the district. In addition, has more detailed information on military family leave resulting from qualifying exigencies. We also have an article in the collective bargaining agreement that specifically covers family care and medical leave. As an administrative regulation, this is for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, we will proceed with adding administrative regulation 4161.8, 4261.8, 4361.8 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Mariscal, and welcome to our team.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Okay, and this takes us to B 14, which is VP and AR 4113.1, deletion of selection department chairperson. Mr. Henderson.
Yes, thank you, and good morning. The next three board policies, as we're cleaning up the policies with this extensive comprehensive review and project, we came across a few that are very specific to just our district. They're not CSBA or gamut policies, and many of them are obsolete and outdated. I've engaged with MTA on these three items, and they agree that there's not a need for them to be policies because these are very clearly outlined in our collective bargaining agreement in terms of the process, and actually more detailed in our contracts than the board policy suggests or outlines. So number one is we recommend a deletion of BPAR 4113.1, selection of department chairperson.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions regarding the deletion of this VP? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the deletion of VP and AR 4113.1? Okay, we have a motion by trustee Marks and seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to B 15, which is BP 4131.2, deletion of instructional assistants to certificated employees from duly authorized representatives of certificated employee organizations.
And if you reference the date on this board policy, it might give you some context that why would we need a policy that outlines a cooperative arrangement for someone from a bargaining unit to visit a campus to help out one of their members. 1982 was somewhat of a volatile time after labor dispute in the district, and so some things were put in policy at that time that 40 years later are likely not needed to be stated in policy. So MTA agrees we would be able to delete this policy.
goes before your time.
So we'd recommend deletion of this policy.
Thank you. Do I have any questions?
That's crazy.
Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the deletion of VP 4131.2? I have a motion by trustee Mejia and a second by trustee Marks. Do all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. This takes us to B16, deletion of VP 34.1, faculty meetings.
Similarly, 1982, we're no longer at the point of needing to clearly have a policy saying that we're going to give advance notice to our teachers about what's going to be on a faculty agenda for the faculty meeting. We have that process outlined clearly in our collective bargaining agreement, and as a common courtesy, in fact, we would want people to know what the meeting is going to be about in advance.
Thank
We
you.
recommend deletion of this policy.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion for the deletion of VP 4134.1? A motion by trustee Mejia and seconded by trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And thank you very much, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you.
And this takes us to B17, first reading of AR 4126, tuberculosis testing.
All
Mr.
right.
Herbst.
Yeah, it's me. Good morning, Board. AR 5141.26 includes information on tuberculosis testing. The AR addresses screening, possible exclusion from school, and again, our district's obligation to work with California Public Health, or our local public health, to prevent the spread of tuberculosis. The AR is new language and it's taken directly from CSBA. Does the board have any recommended revisions to proposed AR 5141.26?
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, this is an AR, so we'll be moving on to B18, which is BP 5141.33, head license. Mr. Herbst.
My favorite subject. BP 5141.33 includes information on head lice. The policy outlines our process for addressing students who have head lice and the process our sites follow when this occurs. This BP is new language and is taken directly from California School Boards Association with one slight adjustment that just doesn't fall in line with what we currently do as a procedure in MCS. It is recommended the board approve BP 5141.33.
Thank you very much. Do I have any, I have a couple of questions on lice. Okay, we'll start off with trustee Marks.
I had a question on the second page, A. How, so I noticed that was deleted, so if there are numerous students in a classroom that have head lice, because I know it's very, it moves from student to student.
It can.
But can you tell me what we do now, and since that was deleted?
We would notify the individual students and their families. We typically don't send out a big letter that goes out to the
Right.
entire classroom. That's just not our procedure in MCS. We would tend to deal with the individuals
Right.
and not like an all-call letter that would say that we have one person or two people in the classroom with lice.
Okay, for some reason, I didn't read it that it was going out to all of the all of the families. I just read it that it was going out to each student, and they wouldn't say who actually, all the ones who had it. Okay.
To me, it was reading as if we would be sending something out to the entire class, and that's not the case. Or at least that's not our procedure currently.
Okay, all right, I just saw us providing them with information about detection and treatment, but yeah, if you, I can see how that could be an issue. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Trustee Maestas.
So as I read through the first page here and got to the third paragraph, and then the third and then the fourth, a scenario popped in my head. So a student can be identified with lice in the morning, stay the entire day, then go home, come back the next day, still have lice, but then be told they can't come back to class.
That's correct. We don't insist that somebody, I mean, when they call and notify, the parents are given the option to come get the child, but oftentimes for a variety of situations, the parents may not be able to. So no, they stay at school that day, then they check the next day, and then if they still have lice, they are sent home.
And they stay with the, I mean, is there any like protocol
Yeah,
there when the kid is identified with lice in the
Prevention from
school?
head-to-head contact. I mean, we don't isolate the child, but we also keep an eye on them to make sure that they are not engaging in head-to-head contact with other kids.
Lice don't jump.
It really is, it really is head-to-head contact.
Bed bugs jump. Lice don't jump.
Okay, so then there's just a little piece here that I think is maybe doesn't kind of follow up. It does say that the student, so inform that the student shall be checked upon return to school the next day and allowed to remain in school if no active head lice are detected. But then the next piece says, upon the student's return to school, the school nurse or designee shall check for the student for active head lice. If it is determined that the student remains infected with head lice, the school nurse or designee shall contact the students. So the previous sentence says that they can't be at school because they can only be there if they have no active head lice.
Correct.
But then the next piece goes back to, well, if they did have head lice, then they could still stay in school, like, it seems a little
That the student shall be checked upon return to school and be allowed to remain in school if no active head lice are detected. Yeah, what it's saying, upon the return to school, we obviously do a check. And then from there, we would notify the family, they would be asked to go get the child, and then we would continue with more intensive treatment on how to treat the head lice. That's.
But if they can't come pick up, then the kid stays, then the
Well,
child
in
stays there.
those situations, but yes, we would ask them at that point to come get their child.
Okay. Okay. Just, I don't know, do you see how I
Yeah,
see that it,
I
like,
can
it
see a little,
doesn't?
yeah, it's somewhat confusing in terms of.
Yeah, a
the
little
wording on that.
confusing of the wording.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's all I have, is just a little confused on that.
Okay, trustee West?
I just wondered if anyone else's head was itching right now? That's all.
Yes, it is amazing, yeah, well, anyway, yes. My head isn't itching, but yes, I can understand the joke.
Great. Okay, any other questions or comments on this? If not, do I hear a motion to approve BP 5141.33? Moved by trustee Marks, seconded by trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and then we'll be moving on to B19. First reading of BP 5112.1, and this is a deletion, it's a deletion of BP 5112.1, exclusion from attendance.
Yeah, like, similar to Associate Superintendent Henderson, these next couple items are a little unique because we have other policy that is sitting in spots to where we're trying to kind of, in a way, align our numbering with California School Boards Association. This board policy on exclusions was last updated in 1986. So I'm recommending deletion of that. It's dated, and then I will circle back around and have a proposed recommendation on one of the future items.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion for the deletion of BP 5112.1? And it has a motion from trustee Mejia and seconded by trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to B20, the first reading of BP and AR 5112.1, exceptions from attendance.
All right, so BP and AR 5112.1 include policy and process for exemptions from attendance for our students at our schools. The BP provides recognition of the compulsory education requirements, but also addresses the instances based on education code that exemptions for school attendance may occur. It is recommended that the board approve BP and AR 5112.1, which includes updated language from CSBA.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve BP 5112.1, exemptions from attendance? Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by
I'll second it.
trustee Marks. And will be with the modifications already outlined at the beginning.
I did not catch that.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to B21, deletion of BP 5112.2, noon pass, grades K through 6.
Yeah, on BP 5112.2 really is, again, is last updated, I want to say, in 1993. It indicates a language on noon pass for grades K-6. I don't know if that's really truly a board policy that I think that the board would really, I don't want to say endorse, it's a procedure, but it's not something that I believe is relevant. There is an AR that occupies that section that I'm proposing. I'm recommending deletion of that board policy.
Thank you very much, though I will say 1993 is fairly young.
For some.
We have a question from trustee Maestas.
Yeah.
I just was trying to figure out when kindergartner would be able to just go off campus for lunch without their parent or guardian. I was like, there you go,
yeah.
they can go play on the park and then come back. So I just thought this was like 1982, 1993. I just want,
When you think about it, I went off campus when I was a child. We could walk to the neighboring grocery store and buy something as a kindergartner. It was totally safe. I walked to school by myself, like a mile. So it was a different society back then. So, of course, that was a lot longer than 92 and 82, but it's good. But I wouldn't send them off now. There's no way.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion for the deletion of VP 5112.2? Moved by trustee Maestas, seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to the first reading of AR 5112.2, exclusions from attendance.
All right, AR 5112.2 includes information, as you said, on exclusions from attendance. This AR addresses mandatory and permissive exclusions from school, as well as the procedures we follow regarding notification of an exclusion, and it outlines an appeal process. This is an administrative regulation, so I'm looking for any recommended revisions to propose 5112.2, should you have any.
Thank you very much. Any questions or recommendations? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to our next item, as this is an AR. And this takes us to B23, first deletion, of BP 5142.1, deletion of school traffic. Huh? Sorry.
I do it all the time.
This is BP 5142.1, school traffic, use of flashing safety lights during foggy weather.
Yeah, again, there is no shortage of signage that goes up in front of our elementary schools, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is somewhat, again, archaic language. It talks about fog, so you could almost say archaic just in that standpoint. But it is occupying an AR on missing children. So while we have a great deal of signage out in front of our schools, I recommend deletion of that particular board policy. It was last updated in 1983. And so proposed deletion of that particular board policy.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, do I hear a motion for the deletion of VP 5142.1? Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. This takes us to B24, first reading of AR 5142.1, identification and reporting of missing children. Mr. Herbst.
All right. AR 5142.1 includes information on the identification and reporting of missing children. The AR addresses specific education code that the district follows regarding notice and reporting missing children. There's a portion of the AR that is stricken simply because we as a district have not and have no plans at this point in participating in a voluntary fingerprinting program. That could be something that we look at in the future. If it is, I would take this back, but at this time, we do not participate in that program. So it is an administrative regulation, looking for any feedback and suggestions on the proposed AR.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or recommendations? I have one, Vice President Brown.
I was particularly interested in the second paragraph. And just, I thought it was interesting that is it a requirement or a recommendation that anytime there's a new student coming to campus that we check to verify that they're not a missing person?
Yeah, it's encouraged. I would tell you after my research and seeing what the, not only what the education code and the penal code require, it's something that we need to send out to our administrators to remind them. But basically, once you get the monthly updated list and that is posted, then that would be the list that you would be going on. Yeah.
Good. I just think it's a really good practice.
It actually is. And so after speaking with Senior Director Chalwell and Attendance Dave Hauk, we have a plan to roll that out in the beginning of the year to make sure that our site administrators are well aware.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Maestas.
Yeah, I might just recommend keeping the fingerprinting program piece in. It does say the district may offer and the district may contract. So it's, that language there just says like, at some point, they could offer it, and then you don't have to, then we don't even have to go back and ever look at this. Like, you don't have to really revisit and then have to bring it up again. I just,
My mindset was just because at this point there is no plan, but to your point, it is May and a lot of May, so therefore there would be no obligation for us to engage. And yeah, you're right, I would not have to take the policy back should we ever choose to do something
Yeah.
like that for the district.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to our next item, as this is an AR for our viewing. This takes us to B25. This is the first reading of BP 6146.4, differential graduation and competency. Mr. Herbst.
Yeah, you bet. BP 6146.4 includes policy on differential graduation and competency standards for students with disabilities. The policy recognizes not only our obligation to provide free appropriate public education to our kids with disabilities, but also provide them a course of study and the supports necessary either through services, accommodations, modifications to measure their academic and functional success. I do want to point out, I'm sure a couple board members may point it out as well, there is an error on this policy. So if you'll notice, we had stricken the language that is on the first page of the policy regarding the IEP team will determine if a student's disabilities preclude, but if you look on the second page, it is now unstricken and it says the exact same thing. My proposal is to stricken both sections, so the one that was already stricken and the other one. I believe that the new language covers the process adequately. So I propose that change be made, and I would recommend that what I put forward in the second reading. So basically, to clarify, the last paragraph on BP 6146.4, the first page, when you get to the next page, I would stricken the first paragraph there as well, for consistency standpoint.
So would that mean that, would that be that first sentence that's on top and then the following paragraph?
It would be, no, I apologize. It would be the individual education program IEP team will determine students' disabilities. It's basically repetitive with the part that we stricken, and I don't know how it showed back up on the other page, but it did.
Got it, okay. You're right.
So with that,
the top part is also a repeat from the, okay, never mind.
yeah,
It's just the heading on each.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I would not change the heading. I would leave the heading, but I would stricken the first paragraph on the second page. So with that minor adjustment, I am recommending that the board approve BP 6146.4.
We have one question from Trustee West.
I just had a question for you for the BP and the AR. I don't see any of those arrows where it denotes a change. And we did look at these March 30th, 2020.
So what are the changes?
It's primarily cleanup language, to be honest with you. The changes, I mean, if you'll notice, instead of a certificate of completion, which actually does have a relevancy in the areas of special education, it outlines that it's a document of educational or achievement or completion. So it basically gives, based on current code, the flexibility to not use the term certificate of completion, because in our district, a certificate of completion means that I have completed my course of study. I was not on track for a diploma, typically with students with moderate to severe disabilities, but I'm not able to complete my courses by a certain time. You could still walk the stage with a certificate. Certificate of you, a district has the flexibility to call it a number of different things, but that was the change, so to speak.
So the language that's in red there is new on the BP, no changes to the AR, is that correct?
Correct, the R would
Okay.
stand as is.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve BP 61.6.4? Moved by trustee Mark, seconded by trustee Nikita. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Herbst. And this takes us to B26, the first reading of BP and AR 6162.7, use of technology in the classroom. Mr. Sultan, which is on Teams.
Good morning, Board President Lopez, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Noguchi. Both of these policies have been long overdue to be updated, the two that I'll be going over this morning. They were last updated in August of 2011. The first one is use of technology in the classroom, which encourages educational use of technology in the classroom and provides training and support as needed for our teachers and students. In addition, this provides guidelines such as educational software selection, evaluation process, use of online services, trademarks, and ongoing operation updates in a best practices fashion in the classroom. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the first reading of both BP 6162.7 and AR 6162.7. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I see a couple of questions from two of our board members. We'll start with trustee Maestas.
So, I'm thinking, kind of moving forward, when was this last revisited? 2011.
Correct.
The board policy was 2011. Videotapes, like, do we need to keep that in there? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that was part of, it was a team effort on this, is that there might be some legacy, and it might even actually be in a class where they're teaching old areas of technology and computer science. So we kept them there because we didn't want to hinder the tools available. But really, you're right, the focus of this is for future technologies. We did also genericize some of the terminology, like the words MySpace was historically used, which that company's gone. So we're trying to talk about it in terms of social media and best practices.
Do you realize how old I feel now that you say a class where they're looking at old technology and just like let's look at ancient stuff like videotapes. One of the things in there, it says online video libraries. I'm wondering if I know other technologies kind of covers a lot of stuff, but something that's very popular and probably going, that's gonna happen a lot more are live streams and streaming applications. I'm wondering if there's a place to put in here where we specifically call out live streams or streaming video instead of just video libraries.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity both on the very first page there when we talk about different types of use in various areas of technology. We could put including live streaming video.
Yeah.
And an example of that, just not only in the ones that we see in commercial, but the state of California libraries have also provided those services free for a couple of years in a row for schools. So that'd be a good suggestion to put into there.
Yeah, I can see students doing a live stream virtual field trip to a museum or something like that. That would be kind of neat.
Yep.
My second piece here, all the way down on the bottom of that first page, says internet access shall be provided for staff and students while on MCS campus. grammatically, should that be on an MCS campus? I'm not quite sure, but the bigger piece is, I'm wondering if we could change the word campus to site, to include, all of our non-campus, places like, district offices. And then if in the future Wi-Fi is provided on buses, that includes buses as well. So
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
my
definitely.
thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of BP 6162.7? Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by Vice President Brown. With the changes already established. So I got a motion by trustee Mejia and a second by trustee, Vice President Brown. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. And I was asked, that we take a quick, 5-minute, break. So we will come back at 9:51. And so we'll head into break now. Welcome back, everyone. We'll move on to B27, which is the first reading of BP and ARE 6163.4, student use of technology, and the deletion of the original AR 6163.4, student use of technology. Mr. Solkin.
All right, well, thank you. Again, this is a student use of technology, identifies the use for students and parents and guardians about the authorized use of technology in our district, computers and other types of technologies. User obligations is also covered in this, responsibilities, consequences for unauthorized use, and our unlawful activities in accordance with this policy and the acceptable use agreement. It also provides cyber safety training for students in the use of technology in our district. And as a side note, anecdotally, our district, actually, I feel like I inherited a great structure where every student is required to go through a testing process online in the fall. And without them doing that by a late date in the fall, they're not able to use technology, which again, is something that's very significant and required for us to get a lot of the federal technology funds that we have. I guess I'm trying to take a step back in terms of the student use. We did delete a lot of those older technologies that are not really that old, like VCRs, but we're deleting it from this and redoing the AR for this one because it's more relevant from the student side to have more modern technologies described in that AR. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the first reading of this proposed draft of BP 6163.4, the student use of technology, and the proposed draft of the AR for this student use of technology.
Thank you very much, and I have a question or comment from Trustee Maestas.
I think you missed one with pagers on that first page. But just as a side note there. On the first page, second paragraph, teachers, administrators, and/or faculty and staff. Is it kind of a redundant statement to say teachers, administrators, and/or faculty and staff? Or should it just say faculty and staff? Mike, I guess it's a question. Can anybody verify that? I know faculty are teachers, so I think at least that is, maybe you don't need both terms in there? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was just making sure that we didn't miss any groupings of employees.
Okay.
But yeah, we can consolidate it.
I mean, it's not, I just was wondering, more of a question than necessary to change it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think some people might identify themselves in one of those different groups. So.
Okay.
And yeah, you can keep it. I'm good with keeping it.
Okay, thank you.
But I still don't know if you should keep pagers. I'm just kidding. It's all right.
You can keep yours.
I'll keep my pager, my district issued pager. No, we do not have district issued pagers, just to get that on the record. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's funny.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Oh, we have a comment from Trustee Marks.
Thank you. I just always appreciate updating this. I voted on this numerous times, and when it first came out, it was like students, it was such a new thing to have students with technology, but now it's so common, and I appreciate that we're letting them know that it's not, anytime they use district technology, it's not your personal technology, so we can have access to it anytime if we need to. So I just appreciate the fact that the students are aware of that, and the teachers as well. So, and the other administrators or faculty or staff. We'll say all of them just to make sure. But thank you. I'm just glad we're keeping up with it on a regular basis.
No, thank you. And the timing of this is perfect because we're getting in prepped for next school year. It's getting in the school site handbooks. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other comments or questions, so I'll ask for the motion of the first reading of BP 6163.4 and the deletion of the original AR 6163.4. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Trustee Mejia, seconded by?
I'll second it. Oh.
I'll second. Seconded by President Lopez. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Solkin. And this takes us to B28, first reading of AR 3311.2, leaseback contracts. Mr. Surley.
Thank you, President Lopez. Good morning, trustees. We already have Board Policy 3311 in existence, but this is new administrative language for 3311.2, brought forward for reference only. It is a mandated administrative regulation that we did not have, and the language is consistent with our practices for awarding leaseback construction contracts.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or recommendations for this AR? I have trustee Vice President Brown.
Mr. Zerly, just checking, there's no change to the methodology here?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, because it matches what we're currently doing.
perfect.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to the next item as this is an AR. And we'll be moving to B29, first reading of AR 3311.3, design build contracts.
Yeah, similar to the prior agenda item, this is new Administrative Regulation 3311.3. It aligns with Board Policy 3311 under awarding bids, and this language is brought forward, again, for reference only. We do not currently have a practice where we issue design-build contracts, but we have spoken with some architects and contractors about this, and this board policy will help us when we decide to use that procurement method for construction contracts. We'll be able to award it under the design-build following this administrative regulation language.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments or recommendations for this AR? I have Trustee Meneses.
Within any of these last two ARs, is there any language that was provided by CSBA on local ordinances that need to be considered, or are they just automatically considered? I'll give you an example. I know locally, they're looking at an ordinance to, if you're gonna hire, if you're hiring for lowest bid, you hire within the county or within the city, instead of going outside to keep some of the business local. That's a local ordinance. So is there language that goes in, that was provided, that goes in here, that following those types of ordinances as well?
Typically,
Or just the state?
that language is up to the local board or the local district to establish. We do give priority. One of the great things about leaseback and design build is it gives us the ability to weight the scoring based on what you, local contractors, use of local subcontractors, prior experience in the district, minority owned, women owned. I mean, those are things that we're allowed to weight differently, the responses, and we're currently doing that. We can't do that under a traditional hard bid environment. We're subject to the lowest bidder in that case, no matter if they're local or they're from, the East Coast. Whoever gives us the lowest bid, we're mandated to take. But we do give consideration to local contractors, especially those that have worked with us in the past and have a relationship with us. We give consideration to minority-owned businesses and also, I believe, women-owned businesses as well.
So we're mandated to take the lowest bid by the state, by ed code, even if there's a ordinance that says the lowest bid should be taken from the county,
Yeah, we're not allowed, in a hard bid environment. where
Hard bid, yeah.
Where we ask for competitive bids, not under leaseback or not under design build.
Right,
Those
I
are
guess this
different.
is just for
But if
my
it's a
understanding.
traditional hard bid environment, somebody comes in from Florida and gives us a low ball bid, we're required to take that low bid in that instance. That's why we prefer leaseback. I mean, that's as you probably see in many board agenda items, we're asking you to award leaseback contracts, but there are times. I think we'll be bringing some painting contracts to you that we're hard bid. So we're not allowed to give certain priorities. We encourage local contractors to submit a bid for those, but we're not allowed to give them any sort of treatment because of the vicinity.
I'll ask more questions on that later.
Okay.
As it pertains to that, but not this piece. Thanks.
Vice President Brown?
I just want to compliment the district on the efficiency of the bidding process and the fact that they've been able to really carry on and move through so many projects as quickly as possible. Very good use of our bond funds because we're using great practices. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions or comments, so we'll be moving on to our next item, as this again is an AR first reading. This takes us to B30, first reading of BP and AR 3230, federal grant funds. Mr. Surley.
Yes, thank you. This is first reading and review of language revising existing board policy 3230 for federal grant funds. The revised language, which is in red, would be the revised language, accounts for the standard district handling and reporting for federal grant funds. The corresponding administrative regulation language is attached, again for reference only, with suggested changes to match CSBA language. And it is recommended to approve the first reading of board policy 3230.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments on these items? Seeing none, can I hear a motion to approve BP 3230, federal grant funds? I have a motion by Vice President Brown, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Trustee Urban, do we have an aye from you? Trustee Urban?
Oh, no, I was approving.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to our last item of the day, B31, first reading of BP and AR 3320, claims and actions against. Mr. Surley.
Yes, thank you. Again, this is first reading and review of a new board policy, 3320. It is consistent with our practice for handling claims against the district. As you all know, this is not something new. We do receive claims against the district periodically, and we did not have a board policy for that. This language has been reviewed by legal counsel, Kelly Moran, with McCormick Barstow and our risk management staff. And it is consistent with our practices, and it is recommended to approve the first reading of board policy 3320 and the corresponding new language for administrative regulation 3320 is included for your reference as well.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve BP 3320? We have a motion by Trustee Marks, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Do I hear any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. All right, so this is the end of the meeting. We want to thank everyone for attending and thank everyone for, oh, yes. I want to thank everyone for the reports, and I have a comment from Trustee Brown, Vice President Brown, sorry.
I just want to thank everyone for going through this process. It is a bit cumbersome to have to go through these policies, but as board members, it's a great opportunity for us to learn the operations of the district and how things function. So thank you for putting up with our questions as we go through that process.
Thank you very much, Vice President Brown. And do I hear a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and see you